Hello everyone. Probably you have heard about the Stop Killing Games initiative. But what it means for developers, in my opinion, of course. First of all, what it is. Because you might not know, I think if you are watching this video, you already know what Stop Killing Games is. It is a consumer protection effort against game devs and publishers, those of which decidedly making their already sold games unplayable in various ways. So basically, when they are killing the games, so we should stop them from killing the already sold games. This is it. It's not more complex. There are no hidden bells and whistles, and there are various legal efforts for making this possible and making this regulated, because there is a bad practice that the things that you are buying are not staying usable after a while. Basically, they stop working. The companies, the developers or the publishers, they decidedly shutting them down, and you can just throw away your thing that you own. So there is various ways, but currently there is a European Union petition and a British petition, and they are gaining momentum, very much momentum again. Thankfully, because I was already supporting this from the get-go. It's crazy to see these numbers. You see, we are only like few percentages less of the goal. So go on, and if you haven't signed it yet and you want your games to be preserved and you want to be able to play your games you own today and in the future, more in the future, by the way, then you should sign it if you haven't already. So, what developers say, because you probably know all of these. The sad thing is that most people only hear of this guy called Piratesoftware, and he not only won't admit fault or his exaggerations, but it kind of makes it look like as if this kind of issue having a developers versus consumers hard stance against each other, which is not true at all. So he misrepresented the whole initiative multiple times. I try not to, even though I will add my own ideas to this talk, but I will try to be specific about them being mine. So he misrepresented it, nearly made this completely fail. It's a miracle that this got picked up again. And yeah, it's crazy. However, others, developers like me and some others, actually much bigger game devs than me, they either agree or can solve these issues, like not killing the games, or even sign the petition. So just a few of them. There is this game dev who proves piratesoftware is wrong. It's a very long video, if you can see. I will put the link in the description. You see it's 56 minutes. Actually, Murator is kind of neutral in this. However, he's more for game preservation, just not sure if the legislation is going to work, or he basically doesn't want the government to mingle in these kind of things, just prefer developers doing it well. But he doesn't look like he's saying, oh, this is not possible to do. It's so complex nowadays. Games cannot be written in this way that you cannot. You expect them to work after release, like for years. He doesn't say that. He basically says quite the opposite in my experience. So there is that. For the technical perspective, this gives more context. Then there is this European indie dev who is actually also Hungarian, because I looked it up, just like me. And I think he has certainly has more published games than me, because I was not working in alone published stuff, just like freelanced in some game projects. I will be back on that later. So he also has a video on that. And he tries to show the developer's perspective too. And I'm not just want to show that, but try to make it more understandable for a layman's terms, people, general population kind of people. Okay. Grams also added his own ideas. Some people like him, people doesn't like him. He's legendary in the legendary times of Blizzard for World of Warcraft and StarCraft and those kind of games. He was developer there at that time, just to put things in perspective, because Piratesoftware was in Blizzard much later, and basically his dad was working in Blizzard already. So I would consider his dad on the level of Grams, but yeah, whatever. And for example, he also complains, just like Casey Muratori, that he doesn't like the European Union, especially making laws and stuff, because sometimes it's just broken. But he also doesn't really hate this effort, and he already, if you can see, he pledged that his games will be your games forever and will never take away access via remote deactivation or other means. This is killing, basically. This is what the initiative against is mostly. They also pledged to provide a way to purchase physical media of their games. That's also a very huge thing, because imagine that maybe you only have it on some store and the store stops working and you doesn't have it on your machine right now installed. So now you cannot get it anymore, even though you paid for it. So this is why they want to make it sure that you can, if you want, purchase physical media. You don't need to, but you can. And they also pledged that if the games require a server, and such servers must be discontinued for whatever reason, they will take all reasonable steps to find a new operator for a game. That means basically that it's closed, it's behind closed doors still, so it doesn't necessarily mean that all the community can run the server binaries or something. Maybe they choose some members of the community and give it to them, or find someone who can make a business out of it or something. And if they for 1 year cannot find a new operator, they will grant players a license to implement the servers for the game and provide the code, the source code, to do so, or whatever help the code means here. Basically, the source code should be in the code here. And yeah, so it's not like there aren't developers who are saying this is very possible. Okay, so not only that, but this is once a solved problem. How we got here, when you can just from far away deactivate a game that you have bought. Like, as a developer, I push a button and on your machine you will never be able to play your game again. Like, how we got here? Because it was not like this in the olden times. Remember these cartridges? Maybe some of you are old enough to remember that. And you just plug it in, you still have that console, it still works. Decades pass, it still works. There are retro collectors who collect these, even CDs, but also these especially. And to be honest, these were not only not getting far away deactivation codes from the internet, because there were no internet, in most cases at least, but these are ROM, read-only memory, which means that the game on it, the cartridge, it's read-only. It's once written, it stays the same. And imagine this. Developers in the olden era, they really had to test their game to the full. They had to test it, make it sure that it works. It's not buggy like hell, because it gets into the ROM, it's fried it in, it's in a microchip, read-only memory, and if you plug in the cartridge, it will stay the same forever. So back then, developers have learned how to make the games good for the first release, unlike nowadays when it's bug like hell. But different times, different perspectives, different tooling. So this was not so much changed when games were still coming on disc, in most cases at least. Let it be floppy, DVD, CD, Blu-ray, whatever. So when you had a physical medium, just like Graham said, you basically pretty much own the game. And it's fine, it's great. Okay, but these games were mostly single player. Or you play with two controllers, but on the same screen, like a fighting game. Or even for PC games, there were games that were like Hot Seat, Worms, Heroes of Might and Magic, when you are exchanging places with your brother when it's his turn. Basically, mostly for turn-based games, but that was really a thing back in the day. Also, there were games where half of the keyboard was mine, half of the keyboard the other guys. I remember those things also. So it's not like multiplayer was not a thing, but it was mostly single player or single machine, to be more specific. However, what about older multiplayer titles? Basically, the first thing was happening is that you could connect two machines together. That was the first. For Warcraft, I remember you could literally plug a COM port cable between the two machines, like maybe you need a special cable or something, but just the two machines were connected, no router, no nothing between them, and just the COM port, the very old port, the one that you used the most back in the day, basically, and oftentimes I would say. So that port, the two machines were connected and just the two people played. Okay, that's one thing. Then came LAN parties, and you bring like three machines to the same room. Very great. And of course, you can play with each other, like all of the three people of you, all of the 20 people of you. There were very huge LAN parties. You bring your own machine with a backpack, you put it in a car or even travel through train and stuff like that. Those were the days. We remember them, like retro enthusiasts try to relive them. And sometimes there are events that they are really reliving that. So yeah, that's one thing. And in those setups, usually one of the computers were designated as server. It was not really a separate product or anything. For example, with Doom, you had the Doom executable, the old 1993 version of the Doom. Now, not the modern one, because it's the same name. So the old 1993 version, you had Doom, you started it, and it had the Doom executable and it had a server executable. Or sometimes the setup executable had the server itself or something like that, but you know what I'm talking about. And if you started the server, some people on the local network could access to yours. And of course, it was solved because there were no way that through the internet they can turn off your game. The internet was in its infancy anyways, so that is what it is. Yeah. The server was basically with every game. This was going with Duke Nukem and many games, even Call of Duty games later on. So this is not like a 90s thing. This is well into the 2000s, even sometimes 2010s. Yeah, okay. So in Call of Duty and more modern games, you literally had a button in the menu calling host game, and oftentimes you could write a name. What is my room name or server name? Like sometimes they call it room, just to be more simple for the end user, for the gamer. And sometimes they call it server name. And you could search on your local network or your LAN party network and find the servers. Sometimes you can even add the server officially listed on some official server list that people can access to, or some people can enter your IP address, port, or this kind of technical definitions. It's basically similar to how your postal address is, just for technical terms. And you might had to change some router configuration or something, but it could work. People who were not able to do that, they were still being able to do that through tools like Hamachi, if you remember that. So it was a solved problem, kind of. I understand it's an old architecture, but it was working. And of course, later, this was not really big enough for really big games, like more players and more stuff. And also it was harder for getting cheaters dealt with and stuff. So this is the new thing that became. All the computers where the players are playing through the internet had an API or protocol. We will talk about what is that in layman's terms. Access the server. Yeah, this was very simple, and the server could still be on your own network if you really wanted to. So yeah, you could go there instead and just play with two people, for example. So it was still simple. It was still a single executable for the server and one for the game. And you might think this is ancient architecture, but think again, this is pretty much how WoW works, World of Warcraft already. Like, I know there are multiple things behind the scenes, but this is the simplified view. There is a master server, and even if there are more things on the right side, the master is dealing with how you access the others. Okay, so it's not like it's much more complicated. Okay, it's not much more complicated even in World of Warcraft and MMORPG games. That's how you could have custom servers for Metin 2, WoW, World of Warcraft, I mean WoW, or various MMORPGs. This is also how the golden age of first-person shooters were happening in the first time, when you access servers for Counter-Strike, Urban Terror, Smoking Guns, Jedi Academy, whatever, you name it. Basically, even Quake 3. So this is it. And I want to talk about a little bit for what is this protocol or API. API just means programming interface, application programming interface. So what kind of interface it is? It's basically how you are postal addressing. When you are sending a letter, there are certain forms that is agreed upon. So it's expected that the sender will be in the top right corner and the receiver will be in the bottom left. It's just agreed upon. Everyone knows this. This is what is called an interface or protocol. Then it's also agreed upon that the first line should be the name, the second should be the address, the third should be the city, then should be like identifiers about the place. Then you can add optionally the email address. This is a new addition for later, and the date of sending is the last. And of course, the date of receiving you cannot tell because it will be traveling. So that is omitted from the other side for the recipient, but it's basically the same things. And you don't need to know his or her email address, because it's Amanda, so it's a her. So yeah, it is what it is. And this is pretty much what an interface is. You know what kind of data, what kind of layout of data, what is going through. And this is agreed upon actually not just between two parties here, like a client and a server, like a game and a server, but three, because in this case, it's agreed upon between you, the postal office, which is pretty much the server, and the recipient, which is also a person. Because, of course, the postal office reads it, know where to forward it, or other postal offices between also other postal offices. This is agreed upon, of course, but that's kind of implied. And that's basically what an interface is. In programming or game development, when we are communicating through the network, we also agree upon how we do that. What is the game sending up to the internet, and where it ends up, how it reacts to that, what it sends back, whatever. So yeah, that is what it is. And of course, what I said is that now the recipient also know where to send back the message. So he is also, or her also, is part of the protocol. We will get back to this later. Yeah, so what went wrong? Because this was already solved, and we could also make MMORPGs with this. So what the hell went wrong? Some say games became more online oriented, much less single player. Yeah, that's true. But this is not really a problem. It was solved, Like, there is nothing that prevents us having a master server, and even if there are like complexities behind it, just change that and let some community also use the servers. Pirate Software would say, and many others would say, oh, it's much more complicated because there are microservices, cloud, third-party providers, distributed service with auto servers, change and pick, third-party server push queues, statistics, weird matchmaking, payer behavior and change detection engines tools, stream downloadable content, special events, and the game recordings and playback can be also stored maybe on separate servers. Yeah, I mean, okay. Actually, most of these already existed when the old Age of Empires game, the Age of Empires 2 actually, got not abandoned, but it became like old. So this group of people called Wobbly or Woobly, I don't know how to pronounce it because I only used it. They took it up and they made it not a matchmaking, but a server launcher. They made a ranking system. They made rules so that if you are a new player, you can only play in new player lobby. If you are a seasoned player, you cannot be in new player lobby. You need to be in the seasoned players, and the rankings for each of those, how you get from the new player to the other, if you got some score which is good enough. They imagined all of this and created it on top of the old game. Of course, they need to reverse engineer a little bit of it. But, so some of it was, many of this was already possible. I know it's differently. I know some of the newer methods might look like it's simpler. Trust me, it's not always the case. Sometimes it's just overly complicated for no purpose at all. And to be honest, this initiative, when it becomes a law, it will be not retroactive. Like, laws are not retroactive. So if there need to be sunset plans for games that are newly developed, come on, like, you can do this. You are a developer, you are skilled, you are game dev, you are like in the top developers. Are you really telling me you cannot do this? Anyways, yeah, some of these are really an issue, like not as big as Pirate Software tries to make it to be, but I understand, yeah, it's a hindrance. I just wanted to mention, I know about this. I know there are many bunch of other things like this. Yeah, I know them. I also know, however, that most games actually employ only a few of these. And the more bigger the studio, the more you employ these. Like, the more variety. Like, for example, if you are making a huge MMORPG with live service elements and microtransactions and anti-cheat tracking and DRM and events and downloadable content and everything imaginable, it's still possible you are not using all of these. Trust me. It's crazy, but it's still possible. And even if you do, you probably have so big of a team that this is a routine task to make it work outside of your own company, like to give it to the community so that it can run a smaller version of your infrastructure. You don't need to keep your infrastructure up. That's not what we are asking for. That's not what the initiative is asking for. They ask for that someone can take after a smaller infrastructure and somehow run the servers or make their game runnable. It shouldn't be as big. It does not need to be as huge. It doesn't need to scale to millions of players. It just be able to run with your friends. It's what you paid for. If you want, yeah, the community maybe can try to scale it to millions of people. Yeah, they can try, but it's not the developers' mandate to do that. Yeah, so it's still doable, all of this. Not that huge of a hassle or issue, but I understand that there are some pain points just with every regulation. I wouldn't say that there are more pain points than it was with GDPR or something like that. And that is already the past and everyone is doing that. Okay. However, there are financial incentives, but first just look at this new architecture because, yeah, I want an overview of that. because now we are having multiple game stations, multiple APIs possible, and multiple server endpoints. Even there are one behind my face. So yeah, there is that, and multiple protocols mean maybe there is not just a server binary, maybe there are multiple ones, different languages, environments, some are licensed in weird ways. However, if that's your issue, actually this initiative will solve it for you, because no game developer can sell games in Europe if they get licensed in that weird way. So of course they will want to do that because it's a very lucrative market. So basically this would mean that those third parties who license things for you in weird ways, they will just start licensing in normal ways, you know. And some are costly to host, the infrastructure. Yeah, I understand, because for millions of users and billions of users, it's different. But we are not asking for your whole infrastructure to keep up. We are just asking for the binaries or some other solutions. We will get to that in later. What we are really imagining this will make developers do. And it's still possible, especially if you have thought out. And the complex hosting is something that piratesoftware also brings up, even in private messages and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, but we are in the cloud. Like, you hear the cloud every time. Even if you are not a developer, you hear the data is in the cloud. But the servers for running the game are probably also in the cloud. I understand that there are things like that. It's also good for latency because it's geographically more evenly distributed. You are not having as much lag if you are lucky to be ending up matchmaked with the people with your region and stuff like that. However, if you are already doing it and it's some MMORPG or a first-person shooter or whatever that's massively multiplayer or mainly multiplayer, you already are doing this in a way that you are probably using Docker, Kubernetes, or all kinds of standard technologies so that you can just fire up new server on demand, literally real time. Like, you should be able to do that. Imagine that you make a game, you imagine it to be an MMORPG, and somehow it becomes a much bigger success than you anticipated. So now what you want? You want your paying customers who already pay you have a laggy experience and really get removed from the game because they don't like the experience, or you shut up a new server very fast. I bet you want to do the latter, because that's the good business practice, and you should be prepared to do that if you are doing these kind of heavily multiplayer things. So you should be easy to spawn pods anyways, and should be still at most 5 to 10 binaries, even in complex cases. Like, I understand microservices is a thing. I'm actually really against that, and it's overused too much. But yeah, I understand. But then it's just a number, and those are more simple things to run. So it's still not that big of a deal as it seems to be, and people make it to be. Yeah, and the core thing, the bigger the company, usually that's when these are more complex. If you are an indie, it's nearly as simple, even in the live service case, and you want it to be. You nearly do things as simple as in the olden times gaming. A single server, or just a single server binary, but on multiple AWS instances, and easy to run with Docker. But still very simple. You want to try to make it because you don't want to pay a lot of money to your cloud providers. And another possibility, if you are indie, is you are just not doing any server stuff, and you just pay some publish subscribe service, completely third party that solves all of it for you. Then you have a way to access that from the code, from the program, from the game, your credentials, your ports, or whatever they provide. It depends on the service. Then when you are sunsetting the game, you can just make it changeable. And that's a possible sunsetting, because then at least the game will survive at least as long as those third-party services are surviving. So that is that. Okay. So the biggest pain, however, in my imagination is financial incentive. So that's what went wrong. Because all of these, like, yeah, I understand technicalities, some things like that. But why we need a petition for this? Because companies literally try to misuse this. They try to kill your games. And they have financial initiatives for this so that they are incentivized to do so. Okay, player base equals value. Like, it's similar to how for a social media like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, the big amount of users is valuable. However, it can turn to the downside because you cannot host forever. For example, you are maybe not a live service game. You just asked your players a one-time fee when they bought the game, and for some reason you made so awesome game, they keep playing it. You cannot sell them anything. The income is not coming back from that, and then you have maybe a choice to make newer games and try to finance this old one from them. But then at that point, this is just a hindrance for your company. I understand that. So you cannot host forever. There are situations where you just cannot, and you need to somehow stop this. Okay, that's understandable. There are things that are not so much understandable. There are just sloppy coding, like indies and smaller studios and even AA studios. They need and try to optimize their server infrastructure so that they don't pay a lot of Amazon bills, they don't pay a lot of Linode bills or whatever they are using, or Azure. I'm just naming a few, or even the third-party PubSub services. PubNub is, for example, one, just to name one. I have used one. I've used that one exactly, so that's why I'm naming that. It's not particularly good or bad, whatever. There are many of those. So yeah, you understand what I'm talking about. The small ones try to optimize this because for them it takes very big money, even if there are few players. What about the big ones? Sometimes they are going sloppy, like they say that, oh yeah, we will sell very high prices this game because it's awesome graphics. We will price them up $100 or 120, and yeah, it will be sunset in like 2 or 3 years, and people will need to buy the new version, like how FIFA is. But for FIFA, at least you have new players, even though it's the same game for ages. But it has some value. It has new team dynamics, new statistics of new players, whatever. So people buy that. But if they make Call of Duty 3046 for some reason too good, maybe people will keep playing on it. So they need to sunset it and make people come to the newer version, So this enables some sloppy coding, and the bigger part is that the issue with keeping games alive or letting them not die, even not keeping it supported or anything, just not letting it die and not killing it, is that if you are not killing the old games of yours, maybe there will be no interest in HD editions, definitive editions, defective editions. Anyone remembers the Grand Theft Auto 3 defective edition? Anyways, just a side note. Remasters or even your new games. And just talking about defective edition, sometimes modders do it too well. For example, the X-Wing Alliance is so heavily moddable that high quality, like even today it looks kind of high quality. Modders can be added, and they made a full remake of the old TIE Fighter and X-Wing games in the newer engine. Just the modders. They basically created a new game, a total conversion. This is actually a thing, a total conversion. You go ModDB, and at the total conversion, many things can come out. So oftentimes modders do very good things, and actually full games that sometimes are better than the original developers' new games. So there is that. If you are making the old games unplayable now, especially now that the games are getting better and better graphics, and imagine now that 2010 games often look better than the current ones. That's 50 years later. If you would ask me in 2005 if there are games that look better from, what is that, 1990 than that day, I would creep out like, what the hell you are talking about? So there is like there is like an interesting point where even older games have nice graphics and playability now. Like, yeah, people in retro would say like even in the 70s that's true, but I'm talking about really. So this modders do too well is actually a really, really huge thing soon. So there are real financial incentives for the developers and publishers to kill your games so that you are not owning them. You are lied to, that you have been told, yeah, you bought this, but now it's not playable anymore. You can buy this new shiny thing above my face. That's what they can be doing. So yeah, there needs to be consumer protection. However, what this means for developers, you see, that's the developer, the game developer. Yeah, I see he's using Unity or Godot. So, what this means for game developers. And first, I must say, this is not in the Stop Killing Games initiative. I don't want to play pirate software. I don't want to spread misinformation. I am just saying this is how I see it as a developer. But this is not written. What's written is basically that you should let the game be in a playable state, even if you are sunsetting it, basically. So if you shut down servers or something, it should be still playable. That's only what it says. Yeah, some people say it's vague, but it's not only wrong that it's vague. I would say it's actually good that it's vague, because there are many ways a developer can make it so that you can still play these games. And some projects fit this better, some projects fit that better. It's actually good that it's vague, because you have so many choices. Look at this. The reason why I say do at least one of these is only because I want to emphasize you don't need to do all of these. Like, there are many ways. There are possibly ways that are not these. And this is never written in the initiative. Like, it's not a law yet. It's just like that the European Parliament will need to start discussing this idea. That's what it's about. So it's not that part yet. But as a developer, this is how I would do it. Like, if I would do anything of this, you could still play my game. Like, for example, my game is either single player and just keeps working offline, like in the olden times. There is no hidden bells and whistles, no hidden shutdown buttons, and it just works. I imagine for single player games, this is just top. It works. Without question. Okay. What about if you are not so simple in this situation, even in single player or in multiplayer? Let's say you release the server binaries, not source code, not anything complicated, just the executable. You can start and make a server. This is how custom World of Warcraft servers work. This is how custom Jedi Academy or whatever KOTOR 2, servers work. Many games have these, and it was working for ages. So I will add also that a single operating system is enough. You don't need to port it or whatever. Like, yeah, I understand that your user base will be mostly on Windows still to this day, even though Linux is getting better. I am on Linux and gaming and developing on Linux. But I know the reality. But the backends are usually Linux. So this doesn't mean that you need to port it to Windows or iOS or something just for your users. But you need to release that, or not, or just release the API or protocol documentation. You know what the API and protocol is? If you haven't seen my video from the start, just go back, click back in the YouTube, and I will talk about it in layman's terms. Like, it's basically the agreed upon communication standard between the game and the server in the internet, or in the cloud, or how you want to call it. So if you just release how exactly the communications are going, someone can make another server. Maybe it's not so scalable. Maybe it cannot handle a million players. Maybe it's much more simple. Maybe it can run on whatever operating system. But the community can make it. And yeah, that's great. Okay, you can also make it single play usable. And I'm not talking about what Pirate Software says that, oh, I will say what this doesn't mean for developers, but it just means, yeah, this is also a choice. You doesn't need to make this choice. You can. It's a possibility. Like with Quake 3, they were really interested in that you can add bots, not just because you might want to exercise alone or something, but also because maybe your server have a lower player count or something and you just want a little bit more better experience. So yeah, that's a thing. And nowadays bots are getting much better. It's for example, bots in Elite Dangerous are actually pretty good. Like, I remember once I got into a fight in Elite Dangerous, and the only reason why I found out it was not a bot because in chat he started name calling me like crazy and telling me why I am going with some kind of starship that is not meant for fighting, but I am so good fighter, and he couldn't take me and just ran away. So it was the name calling that made me realize that this is a human, and of course with these language models, maybe that will be also not the case in the future. Who knows? So bots are already getting better. So yeah, anyways, they often have it. So this is for some games really a usable alternative. Or you can open source it, either the server or the game, or maybe even both. Some people would be interested in like, okay, what about open sourcing the game and not the server? But if you are open sourcing the game, you basically also releasing the API protocol documentation, because from the code you can, even with the documentation, you can just literally read out, okay, what messages are sent to where. Oh, I see they are expecting this back. So yeah, it's not so smooth as if they are documenting that, but you can still make a server on your own, and the community can keep the game alive. So that's that. Yeah. So if you are doing both, that's without doubt that you can just run it, even port it to other systems. But if you just open source the server because you don't want to open source the game, maybe there are many assets in it or something that cannot be open sourced. Yeah, that's usual. But if you just need to open source the server, that's already a very easy part, because the server usually is simpler, at least for indie. I know there are edge cases when it's not, but you don't need to always do this part. You don't need to always choose open sourcing. You can also let players host games, like in the old Call of Duty days. You have a button at the main menu, host game, path, and it starts on the local area network, a LAN party. Basically, you can make at home. That's good. That's preservation. Or you have localhost network game as a fallback already. This seems like the same as the previous one, but let me tell you that an example is the Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, the new one from 2017. This is the much later than the old. They have a modern matchmaking system, rankings, and everything, but parallel to that, they have custom servers and custom server search and whatever. So basically, even if they shut down the low latency ranked matches, very geographically distributed matchmaking servers that handle your communication with low latency, you can still make local servers and play with friends, like in your geographical area, like in whole of Europe or in whole of America. You know what I'm talking about. So they already have that in as a fallback. They don't need to add it. It's already in, because some people prefer to play on weird maps, try weird mods. So some games already have that. So they basically just can sunset as they are, I'm not saying that Age of can sunset as they are, because they might have weird things that are not adhering to the stop killing games, but just saying that, this part should make it possible. You can also outsource hosting and the live service parts. For example, if it's a live service game, maybe you think the revenue doesn't worth it, or the player count is like not so big or shrinking. You can find a company that is interested in outsourcing and running your servers and running the infrastructure, or maybe not the whole of it, but like a smaller one. They can also have like the same in-game currencies and use that for a smaller revenue. And maybe are not interested in keeping up all of that, but they can be. Maybe they have better DevOps team and you are not having a huge DevOps or something, but and for you it's annoying, but for them they say they can do it, like, or maybe they are from some third world country or something where everything is cheaper or something, or maybe they're using AI for all of their half of their things and somehow still succeed, whatever can happen. I think you understand. And you can also embrace existing community servers. Like when someone reverse engineers your server, make it a smaller version or something. This often happens, like custom World of Warcraft, custom this or that. There is a whole list for Linux reverse engineered engines and servers and whatever's often on GitHub. So community often does this anyways. And do you know what happens? These people face lawsuits, they are attacked, they are gone after. Instead of that, you can embrace this and sunset your game if you really not want to do it anymore. If you want your newer games and people there, you can sunset your one and let these people run their own things without you lawsuiting them and stuff like that. So yeah, you can basically do any of these. Your game will still run. And these cover like many cases. Many complex cases too, many simpler cases too, many cases that piratesoftware keeps mumbo-jumbling technical jargon about. So yeah, I hope I could make this understandable for everyday persons as much as is possible, or those interested. But alongside this, what should be really basically in every one of those is that if there are server or any kind of back office service IP addresses or credentials, they should be not just baked in the binary, but be changeable. Even if it's just a config file or something simple. You don't need to have an UI for that. It can be literally a CFG file. Simple. Crazy simple. Don't need to over-engineer this. But if you give like what is the main server or something, what is the IP address in the main menu or something, that's even better, of course. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. It's very generous if you do, but just don't make it baked in. I know reverse engineering people will find it anyways, but let's keep it civil. This is very cheap to do. It's literally like 2 hours of work at worst. I hope your code must be real shit if it's not. So re-implementation of the server, because the client is complex, that might be nasty and shady in some cases, but re-implementation of the server from ground up should be legal. You should not be able to sue people just because they are re-implementing the communication between your players. That's crazy. They are just doing a preservation. Like, maybe there should be like some clauses that they should report you about what they are doing so that you know about them or anything like that. But come on, if you're really a AAA developer where this counts, it's your product should be and your network should be already better than anyone else's, isn't it? And I think you should have a clear product sunset policy. I will show what it is, but later. However, this is like it's similar to the EULA. I wouldn't say it should be part of that because no one reads that. I think before, like 1 or 2 months before you plan to sunset your game, you should put out this, or immediately when you plan to sunset it. And the much better is that you just, when you are buying the game, you already have the product sunset policy. But at least when you are planning to do this, you should be informing people, okay, what's next, what some kind of these are happening. Because let's face it, if this initiative succeeds, you should have some kind of plan anyways, so the people should not be really annoyed by what it will be. Like, something will be surely making the game playable. You can advertise it isn't it? Yeah, I think it's a good advertisement. You can say, oh, my product sunset policy is this generous. You see, if you bought my game, well, you will be able to enjoy it to the full. Or, yeah, it's somewhat nice. You know, you can use this for advertisement. It's not only bad. So what this doesn't mean, this is also very much a topic. And what does mean is my opinion, but what doesn't mean is more like this is kind of official also from the Stop Killing Games. Okay, so the previous was like, that's how I see it. This is also how I see it, but I'm more sure. It's sure, and they write it, so it's so much sure. You do not need to support games indefinitely or after sunset. Plain. It's written plain. Piratesoftware keeps mumbling about like, oh yeah, do you need to do that? No, it's clearly written. You also does not mean that you are forced to open source, break license, whatever, or break law. You know, of course not. Nowhere it's written. It does not mean that non-technical factors of player experience, like the top concurrent player code, should be handled by the sunset version. What does this mean? Like, Piratesoftware said that if you have an MMORPG, sorry for being dark. So if you have an MMORPG and you have 10,000 concurrent players, it's a different experience than when you are playing with 3 of your friends. Yeah, but is this really a reason that you should kill a game? There will be the 3 people who want to play it. They purchased it. They know many people are not interested. It's not their fault. It's not the company's fault. Maybe, yeah, it's actually it is, but not legally, or what can I say? So yeah, it's maybe just not great in a game. So okay, I understand that, but still, they purchased the game. Why couldn't they play 3 as friends? They will understand it's different. They are not dumb or something. They know it's the same game, just less players. What the hell? Yeah. And it doesn't need to mention more, I think, for this. So, it also does not mean anyone without any IT or system administrative knowledge need to be able to host the game server binaries. Like, some people can imagine, because my players are on Windows, but my game servers are on Linux for Linode, I need to port them for Windows so that they can click on it for hosting it locally in the localhost, because no one will know Linux unless they know. No one asks that. The community will sort it out. Just give the freaking binary if you want to do that. There are other possibilities. No one asks you to port it. People will understand, okay, this is how it works. If it needs a Linux, yeah, they will solve it. People are creative. People will have dedicated YouTube channels to tell you, okay, this is how you run this server. They already do that. They already do that even for the illegal things. Like, imagine how they will be doing this for the normal stuff. So yeah, it's just a non-issue. Yeah, and you definitely does not need to rebalance anything for a smaller player base or make a multiplayer experience single player. For some reason, Pirate Software kept on saying this. It's crazy. You can see videos about that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing a reaction video in this. I'm just honestly showing my opinion from a developer's perspective. And it's crazy. No one asked that. Like, he even said, how can anyone ask for that? And Ross answered like, yeah, how can? No one asked for that, nor not the initiative. You know, it's crazy to think this is needed, especially for making multiplayer games single player with campaign and everything. Like, crazy. Yeah, you can do that. That also fulfills the possibility so that it is staying playable. But yeah, it's a very generous way. I don't know why you would do that, but it's not mandatory. Please understand this. It also definitely doesn't mean that you lose intellectual property or the asset right or whatever. Of course not. It's crazy to think so. Like, if you have a game server for some Batman game, you literally started to own the Batman like IP. No, it's crazy. Some people, I have seen people complaining about this and imagining this, and I no idea where they are coming from. So, definitely does not mean the product becomes abandonware or free to copy around or like share around freely or crack or whatever. No. Sunsetting a game in this normal structured sense actually ensures that the legal stance of a game is more stable, because you can tell like, yeah, we have sunsetted this game, the community can run the stuff, you cannot steal it around and stuff like that. You can say that. It's much easier than just abandoning it and it vaguely becomes abandonware. You know what I mean. So definitely also does not mean the community can, without you letting them, in some way or another, monetize the game. Although you can enable this. Of course you can enable this. Why wouldn't you if you want to? Maybe it's the default. Maybe the default is that it's not monetizable. I don't care. Like, I'm pretty sure like this becomes a question when you are sunsetting a game and you just choose what is about to happen. Maybe you want to be generous. Maybe you want to see like your old times. Oh, I was developing this for like 20 years ago and they still play it. There is like a lucrative economy around it and everything like that. Maybe they are enjoying that. Maybe you are an indie and you are proud of that. Maybe it's good for your resume. You can choose whatever you want. It's not writing anything against that. And of course, it's crazy to think that people imply a lot into the Stop Killing Games initiative that is not written there. Yeah. How this product sunset policy looks like when someone is writing that. Of course, Grooms have said something like this, but more vaguely and just on a Twitter post. But this Tales of Tyrunia game, which is actually live service, crazy, isn't it? That Thor and private software store, he said like, oh, this initiative will kill of all live service games. This literally have a game sunset policy already. So this initiative is already changing some of the games, and some of the players. They already, if they are good players, they already start to add these kind of policies. It's crazy. And they are really generous. You do not need to copy exactly this, but this is an example. This is very generous. And it's also good for marketing for an indie, for example. Yeah, look, I'm so big, nice guy. Hey, you can play my games forever. That's very good sounding, isn't it? And it says when they need to shut down the live service something, they will open source release everything. The server and the client means the game that you run. And both of them will be fully open source under an appropriate license. This includes all necessary components to run the game, allowing the community to host their own instances and potentially continue development. Even continue development. That's crazy. That's crazy generous. Comprehensive documentation. That's also very generous. We will provide a clear and detailed documentation how to set up, configure, and maintain your own Tales of Tyrannia server. This will include system requirements, deployment guides, troubleshooting resources, and best practices for server administration. Very nice. Very generous. You don't need to copy exactly this, but there are people who can even do this, and it's a live service game. The one that Thor said, like, oh, it's not possible to solve these kind of things. Live service games will die out. How? This guy literally signed the petition, and very generous game sunset policy. He's also Hungarian. Did I say that? And anyways, that's a little bit of advertisement. Player data migration tools. This is also very nice. So basically, when you buy the sword for your in-game currency or your fancy hat or something, you get migrated. You can opt in, not mandatorily, but you can opt in, migrate your things to a community server while the old ones are still up. Very nice. How nice sunset policy. So, is this realistic? Doable? Is this hard? Is this impossible? Like Piratesoftware tries to make it sound like. Maybe he doesn't intend to make it sound like that. He just wanted to shed light on the possible little bit of works, maybe sometimes measurable amount of works for huge company. Yeah, it's fine. You know, I didn't see it's much more bigger than GDPR would be. And yeah, there are already still companies who don't comply to that. So yeah, I understand this is a hurdle, but come on, it's possible. And this is very nice. Without an initiative like this, I can tell you, the publishers, developers will just go on and continue predatory practices. Something needs to be done. So, is this realistic? I tried a few scenarios, depending on what kind of circumstances. Indies and small studios. What is happening? As I told, they generally try to simplify the network part of their game. Many indies are also single player. But those who are not, even the live service ones, they don't want to pay huge amount of Amazon bills. They don't want to create a very hard to maintain DevOps engineers, 20 teams needed environment. No, they make something very standard, very Docker, very Kubernetes, very simple, AWS, or just literally pay some service that provides them all of these. It's fine. Very simple. And if they are paying a publish subscribe service, they can even make it possible that you can write some plugin to the game. Not the whole source code should be out. Maybe a little plugin, a DLL, a shared object, but not on Linux, DLL, because let's be realistic. On Linux nowadays, most games are Proton. Good for the for those who are not and native, but I'm just saying. It's very simple. And then the players or the community can exchange the DLL to something that is like much different and does not use the publish subscribe, maybe use local network or whatever. Simple like crazy. So indies and small studios usually have very small protocols, very small interfaces. Even in live service, they try to not pay huge bills. They try to make it lean. They try to make it simple. They try to not overcomplicate. They don't have like big huge teams that float and bloat and everything, and they make it out of proportion. So because of survival, they make it small anyways. AAA and huge game studios. What I said is that, come on, this is something that you know what you need to do. There are no customer who doesn't know what it is needed, because it's clear you need to have some end plan. And the third is that you probably are so big of a corporation that this is just technical. It's not the 3D graphics. It's not game mechanics. It's not balancing. It's not inventing a new game type or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Those are hard things of a game. This is just purely technical. For indies, it's small. Maybe it's annoying, but it's small. For AAA and huge studios, maybe it's annoying, but it's very clearly defined. Don't say to me that it's not possible to do this. Just don't. I don't believe. I would start to think that you are not qualified to do your job or something. Literally, I had these kind of feelings that some of the backlash, they might be not as good developers as they seem to look like or something. I really don't understand. Like, I don't know. Ask people who are veterans of the industry, and they will maybe not understand what the hell they are talking about. Like, especially for indies and smaller games. Okay, AA games. Maybe those are a bit more effective and more weird because it can be that they make a bloated network. It's already a bad practice, so that's a good part that this initiative will rule out bad laggy games, if that is the case. But I would still think mostly they try to do it nearly the indie way, as simple as possible. So I wouldn't really annoy. I don't know. I didn't work in those kind of environments, so I literally don't know. Okay, live service games. There is this question: if you buy a sword, what happens? Is it going to be transferred to various servers? Of course not by default. You can have that in the end of life plan to somehow export it. That would be fine. I don't think it needs to be over thought or over engineered. It should be just like some kind of data. Yeah, I bought this. Yeah, okay. And close to the end of life, you could download that. I don't think you should have crypto bullshit around it and Web3 bullshit. I literally don't think that's the way to do. You can do it that way. I understand, but doesn't make it overcomplicated, please. If you really want to sunset your game, it's a one-time thing. So yeah. But even if you don't get it, or even if you need to ask the administrator of the new server who runs the new custom one to give me this sword because look, I have this screenshot, I had it in the old game, I bought it for this many, real money or something like that. Can I have it? And I'm pretty sure that the community will be helpful and have it and make you have it, unless you are really, I don't know, some kind of unmanageable person that is very hard to work with or something, like rude or something. But you possibly get that. I'm pretty sure. And if not, there will be some other community server where you get that. So there is that. I understand this is somewhat of an issue, but I would draw the line that this is not the developer's job anymore. They provide the game. Yeah, if you bought that sword and it's not on the new community server, you just talk with the guy who owns it. So yeah, that's my opinion. I'm not sure that's the opinion of Stop Killing Games or anyone. I'm not talking because of them. I'm talking because I support the initiative as developer size. Okay, so mobile games. That's interesting because, for example, some mobile game stores, if you don't update a application app, let it be game or an app, for some time or some newer SDK version, even if it's completely working, they just remove it from the store or something. So yeah, I think in that case, if you don't intend to keep it updated or something, or released on the newer SDK version or whatever, you should just release the APK and let players play on simulators or emulators. I know it's not the same, I understand, but it doesn't say you should be having the very same experience on the very same device or whatever, but you should be able to have it. If you paid for it, you should be able to have it. Let's face it, if you have a mobile phone, probably you have some kind of computer, and if you are not, yeah, it's like maybe the community will find a way for you to sandbox it on your phone still, or virtually make it accessible through web page with an Android emulation or whatever. You can imagine a lot of things. So I understand the grace on there. I just naming that because legislation probably might be complicated about that, but that's a future question. I don't I wouldn't punish devs if they are not intentionally doing this and intentionally killing a game, and you can pretty much see when that is the case. Then custom console games like custom hardware consoles and stuff like that. Let's say single console store closes. This is another big issue, and it might need to be tackled. I'm not sure if this initiative. I I think not, but maybe Ross can comment on that. Anyways, imagine that you have this or that console on your room floor. So it has the store, you have the game, you don't have it installed, the store closes, and it's basically it bricked your console. I think it's a different thing, and basically they should not be able to do that as the console company for the console. But that's not a game, but a game console. So I think that's why this is different. But as a developer of the game, you cannot much do anything about that. So yeah, maybe you also can say you cannot do anything much about the Android and iOS case that I presented before. But there you can easily just give the APK if that really is a sunset plan. And there are also weird situations which are I don't think really a problem, but people might just come up some kind of stuff like this just to annoy you and make tech mumbo jumbo and try to sound smart and you look at this all of these edge cases and stuff like that. There are like one shot no release games for events. For example, I were participating some of those. So you went to this event, you got some device, whatever it be VR or whatever it be tablet or whatever it is, or really a laptop, or some screen or whatever, and or with a projector. And yeah, you play with that. It's not really released. Like, do you need to stop it, mate? Like, make it playable, like on the same place or the same events if it's a recurring event, or how is that? No, it's clear that you're not owning the game. You just went to some place and played it. Yeah. It's like going to some place and watching a concert or something. You don't own the music there. You can video it or something, but yeah, it is what it is. Everyone understands this is not real edge case. But I have seen people coming up with this kind of weird stuff that legislation will not take this in account and it will be complicated. No, and literally no one will sue you for that. Like and even if they do, they will be so everyday Joe Smo that you will have probably even as an indie more money than them, and they will be like losing all of their assets. Now it's crazy. This is really not a problem. And I even heard like retro commuters, what is happening with that, or games on like bus station automatas that let you play a small game while you are buying a ticket or whatever. No, those you don't own, and it's clear. So no one will hurt those. So yeah, uh, this is all what I wanted to talk about. So thank you. And just for the perspective, I wanted to say like who I am. It's just for the context. I'm mostly doing C++ development, 3D, and so others. Of course, even sometimes GS or Java web, and of course games too. I'm not considering myself directly game developer. I have been involved in game projects, both smaller and very tiny, both released and not, and also the various things that I talked about, like the weird one. And even doing force and embedded whatever. It's like a small freelance company specializing in the weirder stuff, and also code optimization, making things fast. So when you are having low FPS, sometimes I make it higher for some companies and stuff like that, but not just for games. It's actually nowadays a bit more rare for games, but I am intending to really publish my own in the future too. So I'm not a typical indie game dev or something, but have been seeing games from inside too. And yeah, that's it. And you can find my company at magosit.hu because I'm also Hungarian, and the nice squirrel logo is my logo. So thank you. And of course, if you enjoy this content, let's subscribe. You have my YouTube channel, which is having a lot of interesting topics from optimization, new algorithms, very tricky algorithms, actually some game dev related new algorithms too that I've used, or sometimes not just game dev related or 3D related or CAD related, but or geometry, but sometimes for example for simulation packages and stuff like that I was freelancing for through my company. So there is that. I think it's an interesting comment also below my videos, so you can also watch those. And it's a content that you can find rarely anywhere. However, some of it is in Hungarian. Many of my videos, however, are also available in English, and I will put the description my official dev blog, which are actually more rarely updated than my YouTube, which is more regular. So many videos are in Hungarian, but you can, if you're really interested in directly one of those topics, because it's sometimes just in a single place, just on my channel, and you are interested in data, new data structure or something, or new sorting algorithm, basically you can do that through automatic subtitles or whatever, or even just going to my website and asking me like, can you explain this, if I'm really interested in this sorting algorithm, whatever. So yeah, that's it, and thank you for watching. Please go subscribe, and please go sign the petition, even if it says it's already finished, because maybe when you are seeing this video, when I started, it was not finished yet, but when you are seeing, maybe it is already through the threshold. I still wish to subscribe and sign the petition, because maybe some of them are being weeded out or something. So just be sure, make it like more than it's needed. Thank you, and subscribe, push like, comment, whatever.